All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are going all in on what I think is maybe the most frustrating but also the most important part of making electronic music.
The low end, definitely. If you're making tech house or, classic house, this is absolutely for you.
It really is. We've basically synthesized a ton of advice from these top-tier mixing and mastering master classes that focus only on the kick and the bass.
And that's because, according to our sources, this is the exact spot where something like 80% of producers just fail.
And that failure means your tracks sound kind of flabby or weak. They just don't hit right when you play them on a big system.
Exactly, they don't translate.
So our mission today is simple. We are cutting through all the vague advice. We're going to give you the actual recipes. We're talking frequency numbers, compression ratios, the specific millisecond settings that you hear in, a camel fat track.
Or that thick, rolling feel of a purple disco machine mix. Getting this one relationship right, the dance between the kick and the bass, it is by far the fastest way to make your music sound truly professional.
It's all tactical stuff you can apply today. So let's start where the battle always begins, the frequency battlefield.
It's funny you call it that because it really is a conflict. It's almost predictable. Your kick and your bass are just constantly fighting to control the exact same frequencies.
Specifically that, like low mid-range, right?
Right around 60 to 80 hertz, that's the war zone. And when they both try to live there, you just get mud.
You get phase cancellation, which is, it's a technical term, but it basically means they cancel each other out and all the power just vanishes from your track.
It's a territorial dispute. And the golden rule, the one thing all the pros agree on in these genres, is that one of them has to own that territory.
And for tech house and house, that owner is the kick drum.
It has to be. The kick drum must own 60 to 80 hertz. It is completely non-negotiable.
Okay, so why that specific range? What's so sacred about 60 to 80 hertz?
That is the thump. That's the frequency that you physically feel in your chest in a club.
Ah, okay, the physical impact.
Exactly. That energy has to be tied to the rhythm, to the kick. If the bass is sitting there, it just blurs the whole groove and the track loses its anchor.
So if the kick is staking its claim, what's the actual EQ move? What are the numbers that the sources recommend?
For the kick, you need a really focused boost. We're talking +3, maybe +4 decibels, right at 60 to 80 hertz. But the Q factor is really important here.
The Q factor. That's the width of the EQ curve.
Exactly. You want it to be around 1.5. That's surgical enough to hit the thump without making everything else muddy. It sounds musical.
And while you're there, you're not just dealing with the low end of the kick, are you?
No, you can't forget the click. That little beater attack sound is what makes the kick cut through the mix, especially on, a phone. So you add a little boost up around 3 to 5 kilohertz for that definition.
Got it. So now comes the hard part for the bass line. If the kick owns that prime real estate, the bass has to move out.
It has to yield. It's all about subtraction. And honestly, the bass line's main musical note usually lives a bit higher up anyway.
So for the bass, we are literally carving out a hole where the kick is getting its boost. What's the recommended cut?
A pretty big one. You need to cut 60 to 80 hertz on the bass by -3 to even -5 decibels. You're creating a pocket for that kick to punch through with 0 overlap.
But wait a minute. You're cutting that much weight out of the bass. How do you keep it from sounding thin and weak?
That's the critical question. You're not removing the energy, you're just redirecting it. After you make that cut, you boost the bass where its actual note lives.
Which is where?
Usually around 100 to 120 hertz. That's the fundamental. You give that a nice 2 decibel boost, and it's safely out of the kick's way.
Okay, and here's a detail that I think separates the pros from the amateurs. How do you make sure people can still hear the bass line on laptop speakers or a phone?
Harmonics. That's the key. You add a small, gentle boost way up around 800 hertz. You won't really feel it, but it helps your brain hear the tone and the movement of the bass, even when the sub is totally gone.
Wow. So when you put it all together, the kick punches clean through, and the bass just rolls perfectly underneath it.
They become partners. They're not fighting anymore.
That separation gives you that professional clarity. But that's just a static picture. How do we get the movement, the breathing quality of electronic music?
Well, that takes us right into our second pillar, sidechain compression.
This is the sound of modern dance music. That whoop, whoop, whoop.
That's it, that hypnotic breathing rhythm. It's just the process of ducking the bass's volume out of the way for a split second every single time the kick hits.
And the setup is pretty easy in any software, which is why it's so frustrating when people get the settings wrong. You just put a compressor on the bass, and you tell it to listen to the kick.
The settings are everything, though. The flavor of your sidechain, your ratio, your attack, your release, that's what defines the genre.
So let's talk about that really aggressive driving tech house sound, the camel fat sound, where the pump is just so obvious.
For that sound, you have to be aggressive. You want a high ratio, something like 8-to-1 or even higher. And the attack time.
Instant. This is so critical. 0 to 1 millisecond. The bass has to vanish the absolute instant the kick transient hits.
And how fast does it come back? The release?
Pretty fast. For that energetic pump, you want to release around 150 milliseconds. Then you just pull the threshold down until you see the meter ducking by, say, 6 to 10 decibels.
That's a huge amount of ducking. You're supposed to hear it.
It's a rhythmic element. It's part of the groove. Now, contrast that with, say, a deeper, more classic house sound.
More subtle, more musical.
Exactly. You back everything off, use a gentler ratio, maybe 4 to 1.
Yeah.
And you're only looking for maybe 3 to 5 decibels of ducking.
Yeah.
The movement is there, but it's not screaming at you.
Let's really hammer this home. The two biggest mistakes people make are with the attack and the release. What happens if your attack is too slow, like 20 milliseconds?
Disaster. If the attack is too slow, the peak of the kick and the bass hit at the same time before the compressor kicks in. It just creates this mushy, congested sound and eats up all your headroom. And if the release is too fast, say 50 milliseconds.
You'll hear this weird clicking or popping sound. It's ugly. But if it's too slow, like 400 milliseconds, the bass never really recovers and you lose that hypnotic swell. That 150 nils is a really good starting point.
The takeaway for you listening is the bass should almost seem to disappear when the kick hits.
Yeah.
That little moment of silence is the groove.
Right. So now that we've created that dynamic space, let's go back and focus on the kick itself. How do we make a kick sample sound huge and professional?
It's a 3-step process. A specific signal chain. EQ, then compression, then saturation.
This is the chain the pros use to get maximum punch and thickness.
Okay, so plug-in number 1, EQ. Before we even boost anything, the first move is a high-pass filter at about 30 hertz. Why are we doing that?
You're cutting out subsonic rumble. It's deep, deep, low-end energy you can't even hear, but it uses up a ton of your headroom on the master bus.
So by cutting it, you're literally creating more space for the track to be louder.
Instantly. After that, you apply our golden rule boost at 60 to 80 hertz. But then comes another crucial cut that people often miss.
The boxiness.
Yes, that sort of cardboard sound that lives around 200 to 300 hertz. You want to cut that by about 2 decibels with a Q around 2. It cleans up so much clutter.
And you finish with that little click boost up at 3K to 5K?
Yeah.
Okay, plug in 2. Compression. What are we trying to achieve here?
The goal is to control the body, the tail end of the kick, while letting that initial punch, that transient, hit as hard as possible.
And the settings for this are like gospel. Ratio is 4 to 1, but the attack time, this is the game changer.
10 milliseconds. This is the magic number.
Why 10? Why not 0?
Because setting it to 10 milliseconds lets that first sharp, loud part of the kick the transient pass through completely uncompressed. The compressor only grabs the sound after the initial punch.
So it preserves the thwack.
It preserves all of it. Then you use a quick release, about 100 milliseconds, and you're only aiming for 3 or 4 decibels of gain reduction, just enough to even it out. And of course, use makeup gain to get the volume back.
Finally, plug in 3, the secret sauce. Saturation. This is what gives a kick that analog feel.
Yeah, that subtle harmonic distortion that makes it feel alive and helps it cut through a mix. You want to be subtle, though. Think take simulation, not heavy distortion. Keep the drive knob really low, like 2 or 3.
And the tone control is important here too, right?
Very. Set the tone to around 30%. That tends to emphasize the low-end weight, making it feel even thicker. And then this is key. Use the mix or blend knob. Don't use it 100%.
Blend it in.
Blend it in. 40 to 50% wet is usually perfect.
So that 3-part chain is the template for a professional kick. EQ, compression, saturation.
And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. The secret weapon for clubs. The dedicated sub-bass layer.
Right. When you're making music for a huge sound system, sometimes your main bass synth just doesn't have enough of that pure, physical, low-end rumble.
So you create it. It's just a pure sine wave from a simple synth playing the same notes as your main bass line, sitting right underneath it, usually living between 40 and 60 hertz.
And the key word here is simple. No fancy effects, no modulation, just a clean, pure tone.
And that simplicity lets us enforce 2 absolutely critical, non-negotiable rules for club systems.
Number 1.
It has to be mono. 100% mono. zero stereo width. If you have stereo information way down there, the club subs will sum it to mono, and you get horrible phase cancellation. The bass just disappears.
I keep all that deep weight dead center. And rule number 2.
EQ purity. You have to be aggressive. High pass it at 35 hertz to get rid of that useless headroom-eating rumble, and then low pass it sharply at 80 hertz.
To keep it from interfering with the kick or the musical part of the bass.
Exactly. It has its own little pocket, and of course you sidechain it just like your main bass.
So how do you know if the level is right? What's the test?
You should feel it more than you hear it. If you're listening on headphones and you can clearly hear the note of the sub, it's too loud. Back it off until it's just a feeling of weight and depth.
It's worth saying, if you're only making music for, like, streaming or your laptop, you might not need this.
Right.
But for a club track...
It's the standard. It really is.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of these 4 pillars. Number 1, kick owns 60 to 80 hertz, bass owns 100 to 120. You do this with very specific EQ cuts and boosts.
Number 2, sidechain compression creates the groove. Go aggressive with an 8:1 ratio for tech house, or more subtle with a 4:1 ratio for classic house. And remember that 150 millisecond release time.
3, your pro kick chain is EQ to remove rumble and boxiness, compression with that magic 10 millisecond attack, and then subtle saturation blended in at about 40 to 50%.
And 4, for maximum club impact, use a dedicated mono sublayer filtered tightly between, say, 40 and 80 hertz, and sidechained right along with the main bass.
If you apply just those settings, your tracks will sound completely different. They'll hit harder, they'll be cleaner, they'll finally compete. But there's one last idea to leave you with, a next level concept.
We've been talking about processing individual tracks, which is essential for precision, but you also have to think about cohesion, about making everything sound like it belongs together.
You're talking about bus architecture.
Exactly. A bus is like a highway. Instead of putting a compressor on your kick and your clap and all your hats separately, you can route them all to one single group track, a bus.
And then you process that one group.
You process the group. You put one compressor on it to glue them all together, or a tiny bit of reverb to put them in the same space. It's what creates that professional tightness, making all the separate elements sound like a single, cohesive unit.
That's the next step after you've mastered the individual parts.
Mastering bus architecture is how you get professional depth in your mix.
So go apply these low-end recipes right now, and then start thinking about grouping your tracks onto those mixing highways. We guarantee the focus will transform your music. Until the next deep dive, happy mixing.